The US and Germany have been the primary supplier of weapons to Israel, and yet they have the audacity to lecture the world on human rights. They've got no right to lecture others when they themselves are supplying weapons to commit genocide in this current day and age.
An outstretched hand and clear expectations. That's what the German foreign minister said she traveled to Syria with. But she didn't get the handshake.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. How are you?
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Abdul Rahman. I'm good. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good. Sheikh, what are your thoughts on Ahmed Al-Sharaa declining to shake hands with German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock?
Again, if you look at the video, he says an outstretched hand and clear expectations, but she didn't get the handshake, which is not the case. This is actually misrepresentation of the truth. If you look at the picture, look at the video, she did not stretch out her hand, and therefore he did not decline. And the fact that she's a foreign minister, she would be well educated with the religious and cultural practices of foreign countries, especially the country that she's visiting. So she would know that it is not the culture of Muslim men, religious Muslim men, to shake hands with women. And if we look at the photo, he has his head slightly bent with his hand on heart instead of giving her a handshake. So it was actually a respectful encounter. He did not disrespect her at all. I don't think that a hand on heart instead of a handshake would create so much uproar throughout the Western world.
Sheikh, what do you think about her dress? After all, her Syrian counterparts were dressed in formal attire.
Yeah, look, she was dressed in casual clothing. All her Syrian counterparts, the other dignitaries, were all dressed in professional attire, formal attire with suit and tie. You can't really say that she's breaking the protocol. Perhaps she is going against the protocol, but we don't know what the protocol is for Germany. But usually in visiting dignitaries, you would expect that they would dress in more formal attire. But I don't think her dress, for her standards, is not it's not disrespectful. But you can say it was a bit casual. I mean, she wouldn't have looked out of place if she was going shopping or anything like that. Look, the Syrian media didn't make a fuss of how she dressed, even though they could have said, well, at least our dignitaries made an attempt to look professional, whereas her clothing was casual. But the Western media, after 50 years of being under a murderous regime, and Syria is now hopefully making some progress, and the only thing that they can bring up is a handshake or a non-handshake. The other thing that we should point out here is the West needs to understand that other cultures and other religions exist, and they have practices and values that are different to their own. So I think the West has to stop trying to impose their values upon others and regard that these Western values are universal and must be adopted by one and all. That mindset has to be removed.
Sheikh, I'd like you to take a look at this clip and just tell me your thoughts.
And I'm wondering, how do you read this? Is this the message, we will take a handout, but we won't take your hand?
Yeah, interesting how these guys do journalism. I mean, look at the comments. It sounds so arrogant, to be honest. I mean, we will take a handout, but we won't take your hand. First of all, it's a misrepresentation of what actually occurred, as there was no hand that was extended by the foreign minister, one. You can see that she closed her hands, knowing that these people were not going to shake her hand. And instead they greeted her like that, as we already mentioned. The other thing was for him to comment that we will take a hand out, but we won't take our hand. That just sounds a bit condescending. Doesn't it sound condescending? Listen to the other news correspondent, Anchal Vora.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think what the HTS and its leader, what they're doing there is they are sending a message that whilst they want European legitimacy, whilst they want funds from the European Union and European powers, they're still Islamists and that they will hold on to their belief system.
Where she says that, commenting on the fact that he didn't shake her hand, they are showing that they are still Islamists and that they will hold on to their belief system. So what does this mean? Does this mean that a nation is expected to abandon its beliefs, abandon its religion, forsake their religious practices for the mere crumbs offered by those countries who have thrived on the back of exploiting the wealth and resources from the Middle East? Now, although Syria, we're talking about Syria now, it possesses less oil than its oil-rich neighbors, oil-producing neighbors. However, Syria is very strategic because it's like the crossroads connecting all major oil-producing countries to Europe and beyond. So it's very strategic. No doubt, the West has its own agenda in Syria. The fact that the US have scrapped a $10 million bounty that was on the head of Ahmed Al-Sharaa, now the de facto leader of Syria, that's enough to raise suspicions. Yeah? What are their intentions? We know the West, they always try to say that they play the role of peacemaker, human rights champions, and that, as mentioned in the Quran, they say, إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ, that we want Islah, we want what is good. We want to make sure minorities are protected. We want to make sure that women get their rights. But really, they've come for some other agenda. Ala innahum humul mufsidun. The Quran says they are the mufsidun. They are the ones that are corrupt. And they are the ones that are creating a lot of mischief. And that we don't fall for the West playing as peacemaker, well-wisher for minorities. We know that whenever they interfere in any country, they have their own agendas.
Sheikh, what does the word Islamist mean and why do they use it?
Yeah, look, there's no doubt that they use that word with bad intent. That word now carries a negative connotation or negative connotations. It implies that these people are extremists, they are fanatics, they are violent, they are terrorists. That's how they use the word Islamist now. We know that the religion of Islam, their followers are called Muslims. They're not called Islamists. The fact that you've made Islamist, which contains the word of Islam, the religion of 2 billion people, you've made it a derogatory term. Yeah, you use it in a negative way. This shows what your intentions are. The Muslim world does not look favorably upon this because our religion is called Islam, and you've used the word Islamist in a negative way. How would you feel if we called Jews that are committing genocide, in Gaza, if we were to call them Judaists? Or Christians that are extremists and commit crimes, if we were to call them Christianists? How would you feel? The fact that they do this for Islam shows their malicious intent. They first called us Muhammadans. They thought the religion of Islam, they called Muhammadans. Muslims were called Muhammadans. And then afterwards, now they call us Islamists. And they call our religion Islamism. Yeah, our religion is actually Islam, and a person who subscribes or a person who practices Islam is a Muslim. Notice in what context they use the word Islamist here. So if I don't shake a woman's hand, and instead I just give her a polite gesture of respect by putting my hand on my chest, this makes me an Islamist. Yeah? Just picture that level of arrogance. That's her interpretation. That a person is an Islamist because he didn't shake someone's hand, and using the word Islamist in a negative way.
And Sheikh, take a look at this one.
A better future for Syria means an inclusive, peaceful transfer of power, reconciliation and reconstruction. This requires a political dialogue involving all ethnic and religious groups, involving men and equally women. They all must be involved in the constitutional process and in a future Syrian government. In our talks today, we made clear Europe will support, but Europe would not be a financier of Islamist structures.
Yeah, so here, what she's saying is that this new government that is about to rule over Syria must look after the minorities, must not cause harm to them, and likewise must treat women. I mean, here we go again, that narrative that we oppress women, that Muslims oppress women, and they must have them equal and must be in parliament. Let's keep one thing in mind. The previous ruler of Syria allegedly killed hundreds and thousands of minorities and also just the general population of Syria, as well as women. But all of a sudden now they're preaching again. And that she's talking, if she's suggesting that you should treat minorities well, then perhaps she should preach to her Israeli allies that they're supplying weapons to. Yeah? They could do with that type of talking down to. Germany lecturing others on human rights. This is the country that originated perhaps anti-Semitism. This is the country that is the historical heartland of anti-Semitism. And they are responsible for the gassing of millions of Jews in the Holocaust. Now they are lecturing the new leader of Syria, Ahmed Al-Sharaa, on human rights. So while they are giving lectures on human rights, perhaps they should fly over and give lectures to their allies.
Sheikh, we have just one more. Just take a look at it and just tell us what you think.
Chancellor Olaf Scholz announced further arms deliveries to Israel during a debate in the country's parliament. In his speech, he made it clear that Germany previously delivered arms and will continue to do so.
Well, in fact, Germany has long been Israel's second biggest foreign supplier of weapons. Data compiled by the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute shows that Germany delivered 30% of Israel's major weapons imports. From 2019 to 2023, Germany was second only to the United States in these deliveries, with third-placed Italy providing less than 1%.
They've got no right to lecture others when they themselves are supplying weapons to commit genocide in this current day and age. Isn't this hypocrisy? For the last 15 months, they have been supporting Israel's genocide in Gaza. The US and Germany have been the primary supplier of weapons to Israel, and yet they have the audacity to lecture the world on human rights.
Thank you for your time, Sheikh, and thank you to our viewers. If you like this episode of TBM, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share for future videos. And until next time, Assalamu alaikum.